Welcome to the Quarter Life Lessons podcast,
a show on the relatable lessons learned on the journey to and through adulthood. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm CharLea. Let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of the Quarter Life Lessons podcast. We are here today with a friend of mine, Kimberly Gold. He is an active community member here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Currently up for election for District 4 in our city council. And a friend of mine for a number of years, and we're excited to get to know her and learn what she has to share today. So, Kimberly, please introduce yourself, if you will, to our amazing listeners.
Good morning, evening, afternoon, everybody. My name is Kimberly Gold, and I love and live in Colorado Springs. I think that we do ourselves a disservice because a lot of times we'll rattle off things that we're associated with, but I think that we should actually introduce values we associate ourselves with and what fills your heart. And I'm going to tell you that in lieu of a traditional bio, what fills my heart is community and people and being authentic and really connecting with people in a way that uplifts them, even if the interaction is 3 minutes. I feel it is our duty and our honor to give value to our community. So that drives everything I do. So whatever titles I give you, that's what drives that. So that's what's most important.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Okay, well, since Kimberly set the bar, CharLea, we have to respond. What are your values that drive you?
Absolutely. And first, just welcome Kimberly to the podcast. We're so happy to have you. Really quick, when me and Stephanie were planning this, Stephanie was like, who else do you want to interview? And I was like, I want to interview the lady that I keep hearing about everywhere in town. And every time I turn on the news, like, she's on there. And then when I see her on social media, like, she's on there. She's all over my LinkedIn. So I just want to get to know Kimberly. And she's like, my friend, Kimberly Gold. I'm like, yes, that's who I want to know. So again, we're just thankful to have you on. And as for values, certainly working with others to grow towards more mental peace. Again, that's my career field in the line of social work and recovery, as well as using my own journey to grow and just to be an example for others that, things do get better. They do get hard as well. There's a lot of things that are difficult, but just bringing honesty and reality to what experiencing life really is like, and just skills and support on how to navigate that efficiently.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the way you introduced yourself, Kimberly, and it's wonderful to have the accolades, the titles, to be an achiever and to be driven, but to talk about the truth behind the drive is so amazing. For me, I think a lot of years it was probably perfectionism and earning a lot of things, and I'm coming to terms with those things here recently in my life. But now I would say the value that drives me is authenticity. And really, that is so different. And getting behind all the coping and behind all the, the worthiness challenges and just being authentic self and seeing where that takes me. It's a whole different lane for me, and I'm excited about it.
I'm excited for you too, Stephanie. It takes so much courage to be yourself in this world.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so true. Very true. What makes me think about what you both said actually is a recent podcast I heard with Trevor Noah, where someone asked him, I think it was the values that drive him or kind of what he wanted to be. And his answer was fertilizer. And then it's kind of funny, right? And then he goes on to say that fertilizer enhances everything around it, and it makes the soil better wherever it is. And that whether it is helping a friend in need or giving someone directions on the street, he wanted to have a positive impact on the people around him. And then this is the part I love too. He talked about how fertilizer itself takes in components and grows itself. And it's such a vivid thing to say. It's such a vivid thing and a metaphor, I suppose, to speak to what all three of us have touched on about growing self in authenticity and being there to enhance the lives of those around us. So I think we're all being good fertilizer.
I love that. And Trevor Noah is my South African bae. He doesn't know it yet, but One day he will. To my left, there's a signed picture where he said for Kimberly,
Oh,
and and I have a signed book from Born a Crime, and I'm just waiting for him to be sitting here next to me one day.
Oh my goodness, what an
manifestation.
amazing human. Wonderful. Okay, Kimberly, so tell us, what does it mean? What does community mean to you? And how did you get started being active in your community?
I think community to me is well, one, I always say community changes everything. And I think community is everything. I think we work so hard to put things, people, places, and boxes are your whole ecosystem, a whole universe, right? And anything that you're crossing paths with, that's part of your community. You might not accept it, but that's part of your community. Whether it's my neighbor across the street, whether it's, my grocery store 5 minutes away or 50 miles away, like it's very, very big and very broad, but the community is our whole universe. You just have to decide which parts of the community you're focused on. And I think that's the challenge that a lot of people face is one, seeing themselves connected to everything, and then two, figuring out what they want to focus on. But if you ask me, everything is connected and everything is my community, which is why when I'm out and about and even in my own personal space, I try to show up with courage and authenticity, because I feel it my honor to serve our community through being the best version of myself or growing versions of myself.
It's amazing that you have that perspective. Was that perspective something that you had from the beginning? Was it taught to you through family or culture, or was it something that you've crafted for yourself over time?
I think all of the above. So growing up, I belonged and still do belong to the military community. And with the military community, we're very transient, we move a lot. And some people will take that transient lifestyle and say, I'm not going to plug in. But I actually think that's more reason to dig in, because you'll find when I moved here to Colorado Springs, I connected with a friend of mine who was part of my military community from another installation. And I've crossed paths with many people who actually have been from different installations. So that military part of my life has taught me, like, we're connected, and it doesn't matter if you were in Korea, if you were in Texas, if you're in Colorado, you're in Georgia, your paths will likely cross again. So be good to one another. And also, I think part of my heritage is being Korean, and that Korean culture is very community, very we over I. And I think that has shaped a lot of who I am, in that you don't just look out for yourself, you look out for the greater good. You look out for everyone. You make sacrifices and concessions if it benefits another person.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that about kind of how you forged your unique perspective and why it's such a value and priority for you. Obviously, there's times when we're around people and it's energizing and it's easy to stay focused on the next step, or it's very clear, or things are jiving and synergistic. But I'm curious, how do you stay motivated to keep giving?
I do focus on spaces where I feel like I can grow, and I can feel where and that's selfish, but so I want to also add to that, not only where I can grow, but really where I can add value. Um, Life is messy, life is complicated, it's not always peaceful. And I have to remind myself what I remind myself of times where I have not been better versions of myself, times that I have not been proud of myself, where I've been ashamed of how I've acted, guilty for how I've acted. Kindness is a core value for me. So if I act unkind, I feel guilty about that, because that's something that's a core value for me. And I remind myself that the times where I have acted unkind, most of the time I have not been kind to myself. In that moment, it's not really me expressing anger, disgust, disappointment in you, Stephanie, or CharLea. It's actually me projecting what's going on in me. So when I interact with other people, and I have seen some foul things, I'm like, wow, this person actually, we need to lean into love and kindness and grace for this person. It is not always easy because sometimes people trigger your triggers, but but I do work really hard. And if I can't, if I just really, really can't, because of whatever is going on in my situation, then I do, remove myself, because that's what's best. It's not good for me to react to that unkindness. So circling back to the original question, the what's my motivation? How do I stay motivated? Is really leaning into those spaces where it's reciprocal, where I can grow and I can also give value. I think that's really important. Not everything is your assignment, and I
Mm.
think sometimes we get confused because we might be passionate about something, or we feel like there's alignment there with what we have going on, but not everything is your assignment, and you cannot want more for others than they want for themselves. And I've had to learn that the hard way so many times.
Oh my gosh, like what a big, bold lesson that I would never have thought to ask you about. That is so essential. Not everything is your assignment. And the more you focus on yourself, honestly, in my opinion, the better you're equipped to love the people around you. Because the filter that we have, that subconscious filter that everything goes through if we're not aware, is so activated and you don't even know. And I would completely agree that when someone is showing up, um, in a negative way, and whatever you fill in the blank on the word negative, it has so much more to do with what they feel about themselves inside that they maybe are unaware of than it has to do with you and the way that you show up. So that's so wise. The other thing we've talked about on the show before is the combination of using your intellect and your cognitive skills mixed with your emotions. And Kimberly, your answers come through so wise, like you've blended the two so well. And I really appreciate that about you. And they say give people their flowers, and I wanted to give that to you.
Thank you. I love flowers. I accept it.
And certainly, Kimberly, when you're discussing this internal conflict that happens, from a clinical lens, we refer to that as moral injury, and it's the act of betraying yourself, and it's out of your own actions. And I'm just curious, how did you get to the point? How did you get to the point of healing to where you understood that those projections that you're putting, or in the past that you were putting on other people, or when you're learning about choosing the spaces that you want to be in because it's beneficial to you, how did you get to that point?
I have the honor of being loved by a lot of people. I feel love very deeply from my mother, my siblings. I wasn't blessed with biological sisters, but I think that was actually a blessing because I got to choose my sisters. And I've received a lot of love over my life, and I've received a lot of pain, especially in my childhood when I had no control over the circumstances I was in or the people I was with. And I have been aggrieved in heinous ways by adults who should have been caregivers. And because I think at any age, when you're a younger child, you have this concept of parents, adults, caregivers are supposed to be just that, caregivers. And when there's this disconnect between what they should be and what is actually happening, it is so disruptive to everything, every part of you, every fiber of you. And that was the case for me. That disruption, that trauma, I don't know why we're so scared to say trauma these days, but that trauma, I think about it now and I'm like nearly brought to tears, but that trauma like really broke me. And I held on to all of this pain that was inflicted on me when I couldn't do anything. And I remember growing up and thinking, I would just wish somebody would save me. I just wish somebody would save me. I guess that's that Disney princess syndrome. But truly, I remember thinking, I just wish somebody would save me and like help me out of these situations that I was stuck in with adults who were not giving care. And I harbored so much anger and pain and resentment, and it poured out of me. And in it pouring out of me, the person that it kept hurting, guess what? Was me. Like, yeah, I hurt some people along the way, but ultimately the person it was hurting was me. I did not want to look at myself in the mirror. I hated who I was. I hated everything I stood for. And I had to really reflect on it and realize that I was hating myself for the actions that somebody else had done against me. Make it make sense. Make it make sense, right? And there just became a point in my life where it just clicked that I was repeating the cycle of everything that was happening to me. And I didn't want to be that anymore. I told myself that everybody can have a sob story, and it was up to me to make it a success story because nobody was coming to save me. There is nobody in this world, as well intended as they are, that can save you from you, period. And that was the turning point where I said, I'm going to live the way that makes me comfortable, that makes me happy, brings joy to me, that I can look in the mirror and I can be happy, satisfied, overjoyed, like, you are that girl and you have peace with yourself. And that was a shift. And it didn't happen overnight. It's a process. It's still a process. I still have to work through that. But actively, that started to happen in my late 20s and early 30s. So quarter life lessons, whew, I wish somebody had given this to me before.
Yes, and what a powerful reflection on how you had to come to that authentic reality in order to learn more about what was really happening on the surface. Like, what are these actions really meaning? And what are they doing to you? It does bring up another question for me, just that, so the healing has brought you to this place where you want to be in these rooms and you know that not everything is your journey. But how do you know when it's not your journey?
How do you know it's not your journey? I think that I'm a person of faith, and I say that vaguely because it is vague, and it means different things to different people. But in being a person of faith, I believe that a lot of times we know, um, but our experiences invalidate what we know. And that's a terrible way to describe it, but instinctively, spiritually, discernibly, however you say that word, there is something innate that you know from a very, very young age. Ooh, this feels off. This adult shouldn't be acting this way. Ooh, I should not be in this room. Ooh, I should not talk this way. There is something for most of us that you know, but you talk yourself into whatever that thing is. I've done this a lot with friends where I've connected with somebody and I'm like, "Ooh, I like them and I really want to be chosen by them and I want them to like me." But I knew there was some red flag there. And I said, "Well, no, no, no. She just acts that way because da 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 da. Oh, no, 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 no. She just acts that way because she was having a bad day." No, my body knew that that person was not a person I needed to be around. But I fought my body, I fought my mind, I fought my spirit, and then I paid for it later. So that's like a really terrible answer, but I
Oh
think if we
no.
just leaned into being in touch with yourself, you know when you're not in the right place.
That's an amazing answer. And in fact, it really is representative of those cycles that you're speaking about. Those cycles is us getting the experience to have the confidence to trust ourselves. At some point along the way, we stop doing that from infancy. You know, like you're saying, like it's you fighting against yourself to avoid whatever that thing is. And maybe it's, you know, if I don't try hard with this one girl who it really doesn't feel like she should be my friend, what if I don't have any friends? You know, like what if it's loneliness that I'm trying to avoid? I believe that that's a wonderful and very much so introspective answer on really what intuition and feelings manifest as when you're physically making decisions for how you want to move through your life.
I saw a quote recently that talked about how anxiety, and obviously, I'm not labeling this from a clinical perspective, but I've been struggling with my own definition of anxiety and the ways that I process. And I loved this, saying it said, anxiety is a fight you have with reality because there's something going on that's just not aligned. And whether you're trying anxiously to make it your assignment when it's not, or you're earning something, or you're afraid. And I honestly, I don't think before I had this authentic awakening, I guess we'll call it this year, I don't think I knew how afraid I was. I really don't think I knew how fear showed up in my life, and I avoided it, and I used toxic positivity on myself. And I'm not shaming the person that I used to be. I just don't know that they were very in touch with themselves. So to Kimberly's point, her feedback was to stay in touch with yourself, and don't abandon yourself because maybe the feelings there are difficult. And I agree with you, Kimberly. People don't like the word trauma, and it's very difficult for people to use the word trauma and identify it in their lives. But that's something I'm trying to work on too. Is the context of trauma. Maybe the details are different for everyone, but the impact of trauma is the same, whether it is from a caregiver or a super violent experience. You know what I'm saying? I think we've got the definition of trauma wrong as a society, the perceived definition, when it should be a definition that brings us together because it's about something that impacted us. So I appreciated that perspective too.
As always, the conversation does not end here.
We want to know your thoughts on these topics. Join us on Instagram at Quarter Life Lessons Pod to share your perspectives and continue the conversation to thrive.
Thank you for tuning in to the Quarter Life Lessons podcast. Find new episodes on Spotify, YouTube, and our Buzzsprout website.